Well, last week, introduced a brand new series. We said for 4 weeks especially, we're going to talk about the power and the importance of kindness. We introduced the Kindness Challenge with the goal and the intention that we want to help you enjoy better relationships. And we invited you to take a challenge that with one person, you would do 3 things every day with one person, and what we have found, the research shows us that folks who have taken up the challenge do these 3 things for one person every day for 30 days, that 89% of people said they saw improvement in their relationships. And I've heard a couple of stories this week of how folks already have seen some improvement. Here's one of the things I want to do next week, okay? I'd love for us to come next week, and we'll have a way to be able to share what you have been experiencing and seeing already, and if you've been however you've seen some improvement in your relationships already, there will be a way for you to kind of communicate that. We'll celebrate, we'll share with that, because it's important for us to celebrate the good things God is doing together. So if you've gone to the website, jointhekindnesschallenge.com, I told you a little bit about it last week, so I thought, well, I should practice what I preach and take the kindness quotient. And there's a little online inventory there you can take, and you can find out how, kind of your starting point of where you're starting at when it comes to kindness. Ask several questions. You're supposed to answer honestly, so I took the quiz, tried to answer honestly, and they got my results back, okay? So how does Jason do with kindness here? They said, well, you can be compared to Lightning McQueen when it comes to kindness, or another kind of reference here, or you can be compared to Sharpay. And so here's the words, and just in case you have no idea who either of those are. Well, here's what it told me, okay? You are somewhat self-centered, but redeemable. Good. You're probably too focused on your own needs and desires. Resolve to prioritize kindness and eliminate negativity, and you will see your perspective change. That's dumb. I'm not negative. Whatever. Anyway, so. Hey. Yes. Hey, I need this just as much as anybody else does. So don't think that I've been working at it. It's not easy, is it? When we say I'm going to intentionally show kindness every day in some specific ways, it takes a lot of work and effort, doesn't it? Today we're going to talk about, though, that it is worth it. Here's what we discovered last week, okay? The secret sauce to relationships, the key insight that if you get this one thing, this will be worth all of the time and effort that you put into this subject here, because this is so valuable here. The key factor to thriving relationships. Jesus supported it. The research Jesus said it. The research supports it. What is the key factor? When we look around, sometimes, if you're a little bit like me, you look around and you see people who just seem to enjoy good, healthy relationships, and you're like, what do they have that I don't? And our inclination is to say, well, if I had the friends that they have, then I could have good relationships, Or look at friends who have a great marriage, and you're like, well, if I had the spouse they had, then I could, right? It's easy for us to think. The key factor, though, Jesus tells us, the research supports it, the key factor to thriving relationships is not how other people treat you. The key factor to thriving relationships is how you treat others. Here's what we landed on. Here was the big takeaway from last week. Let's continue. We're going to build on this week, was right here. Next slide there. Yeah. The quality of my relationships depends far more on how I treat others than on how they treat me. And so if you've been thinking for a long time, man, my marriage will be great as soon as she does whatever. Or if you've been thinking, man, my marriage will be great as soon as he stops doing whatever. Key to the quality of my relationships depends far more on how I treat my spouse than on how they treat me. You're looking around your workplace, and it's a little bit unhealthy, a little bit toxic environment. You wish that it could be better. And you say, our workplace environment here, it'll be better as soon as they start, as soon as they stop. No, you know what? Your workplace environment will get better when you start or you stop So this is the starting point. Like I said, this is probably the most valuable thing you can take away from this. In fact, I want you to read this with me. I want you to read it out loud. I want you to read it with some belief. Even if you're struggling to believe it, if you just read it as if you believe it, it'll help you to believe it even more. And we're going to talk about how we can continue to put it into practice. So here we go. Read this with me. The quality of my relationships depends far more on how I treat others than on how they treat me. So here's what we said. If that is true, we believe it's true, here's what we're doing about it. We're putting it into practice. Pick one person. And for the next 30 days, do these 3 things. Number 1, choose to say nothing negative about your person, either to them or to someone else. We're going to start by nixing the negativity. Even though that's what you feel, even though that's what you want to say, you can control what you say and what you don't say. We're going to nix the negativity, say nothing negative about them to them, or after they go out of the room to anyone else. Number 2, we're not only going to not be negative, we're going to replace it with this. Every day, find one positive thing you can sincerely praise or affirm about your person. Tell them and tell someone else. So we're going to look for, not only not be negative, we're looking for what we can praise them or affirm them for. And then, and guys especially, this is really important because a lot of times we think these things, we think them, we just don't say them. Or especially, spouse or children, you really appreciate your spouse and kids, and you even can identify some specific ways. We're just not very good at verbalizing it. So we're going to find one thing we can sincerely praise or affirm, say it out loud to them, and just like we're not going to spread negativity, we're going to spread affirmations, and we're going to tell somebody else. And number 3, the third thing, every day, next 30 days, every day do a small act of kindness for your person. You've been doing that? Some of you are like, okay, I'm on day 7 and I'm running out of ideas. See, hey, I hear you, right? We're trying to do things specific. So one of the things we'll do today, before we go, I'm going to try to really get through all the content here, and the last thing we'll land on is some specific suggestions for how you can do this very practically and what to do. But here's what we're going to focus on today. Let's just keep the conversation going. We're going to talk about the power of kindness. So the objection that someone could raise is, this sounds nice and all, but does kindness really change anything? Or is this just a nice topic to talk about, and we're going to look back and just kind of a blip on the radar? Or could it be possible that if we really give ourselves to learning to affirm people, look for what is good, and live in proactive kindness, could it really change the way we change our relationships, permanently long-term? We could look back to this time and say, that was a significant turning point for me, for my relationships. Does kindness really change anything? Well, let's start it like this. Tomorrow morning, you head into work, and you walk into the office, and you're there for a little while, and then he walks in. Oh, you know who I'm talking about. And he says that thing that he always says, or he starts talking like he normally does, and he just talks and talks and talks and talks. Or he has these little weird idiosyncrasies that he just kind of does. And when he does that or says it, it just kind of grates you, right? And your normal response, you just do what you normally do, and you say something negative to him, or you put your hands on your hips, and your face communicates a lot, and you say a lot, but even if you don't say a lot, and you're just project all that negativity back on him. What happens in that moment? Remember, we're asking the question, does kindness change anything? What happens? He does that thing. You respond with your typical negativity. And what does it do? It spreads, and the emotional feeling in the room gets dragged down, and you have helped create a negative environment and help sustain a negative environment. That happened when they walked in and you responded. Option number 2. Tomorrow morning, coworker walks in, says his thing, does his thing, you feel your thing just like normal. But this time, you've taken up the possibility that you don't have to say everything that comes to mind. And so you choose to shut your mouth, and you do your best to control your face, and you don't intentionally do that body language, and you just don't react. What happens? Nothing. But the benefit is we haven't like dragged down the atmosphere and environment there, but we just kind of kept it there. They've done their part to kind of drag down a little bit, but you haven't added to it. Option 2, okay? Option 3. Show up at work tomorrow morning, coworker comes in, says his thing, does his thing. And you, because Jesus told you to do this, and you're like, all right, Jesus, I guess I have to. You choose to respond with kindness. In fact, you've been thinking about it and you're ready for him, and you have something positive to say and affirming to say of him, and he walks out of the room and you keep the affirmation going. What happens then? Another one of your coworkers has a heart attack, falls over. Everybody is so surprised. They call the ambulance. The ambulance takes him away, and we all go home early, and it's a great day. And you say, Jesus made me do it. Okay, well, here's what happens. They walk in, they say their thing, they do their thing, everybody's expecting your normal response, and you respond with intentional kindness, and positive, kind words come out of your mouth, and after they leave the room, they continue, and what happens to the room? People smile more, people feel better, you feel better about yourself, and that person doesn't quite know what to think of it. Does kindness change something? Does it change anything? Yes, it changes the atmosphere when you and I choose to intentionally respond with kindness, even in the face of meanness. Jesus said something about this for sure. See, this is not just research and good ideas and observations of human behavior. Listen to what Jesus said. Luke chapter 6, Jesus is early on in his ministry, and he's got a new way of living life. He's gathering anybody who will listen. Here's what he says, Luke chapter 6, starting in verse 32. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. If you lend to those from whom you can fully expect repayment, well, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But I tell you, Jesus says, if you're going to follow me, love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without even expecting to get anything back. And then your reward will be great. And you will be children of the Most High, because listen to this, because he is kind to the ungrateful. There's that kind word right there. For he is kind to the ungrateful and to the wicked. So be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Jesus says, don't just love those who love you. Don't just respond positively to those who initiate with positivity. He says that's normal. Anybody can do that. I mean, really, don't push this too far here, but you don't really need God to do that. He says it. Even sinners can love those who love them. That's easy. That's just normal human behavior. He says, I want you to be weird, but weird in a good way. You're to be different because you have the power of God working in you and through you. And here's what God does. God is kind to the ungrateful, and God, our Father, is kind to the wicked, and I want you to do the same, Jesus says. We have the power of God in us to love even the unlovable, even to love our enemies and those who mistreat us. Now, you may ask, wait. Really? I can love my enemies? I can't control how I feel, and I'm supposed to, you tell me that person at work, whoever it may be, who mistreats me, I'm supposed to feel loving towards them. No. He doesn't say feel loving towards them, because in the end, love is not essentially an emotion. Now, the emotion is nice, and when the positive emotions accompany love, it's great and it's wonderful, an extra blessing, but really in the core of it, love's not an emotion. Look at what Jesus says. He says, love your enemies, and look at how he illustrates to do that. Love your enemies. Do good to them. He says, bless them, speak words of blessing. Pray for them. How you show love to someone is to speak words of blessing and to pray for them. And you can do that regardless of how you feel, whether you feel good or feel bad about them in the relationship. Lend to them, be merciful to them. In other words, when Jesus says love your enemies, he follows it up with a series of verbs, action words, because in the end, love is not just a feeling. Love is action, intentionally chosen action. Love is a verb that drives the train. If the caboose of emotion follows, that's great, but you can show love and be loving even without the emotion. Now think about this. When you and I choose to act in a way that is different than how we feel, that is life change. The ability to say, even though I feel bad towards you, even though I feel like lashing out in negativity and meanness towards you, by the command of Jesus and the power of God, I'll respond the opposite of how I feel and show love. That is change. Does kindness change anything? Yes. That when God treats us with kindness, it changes us. And when we treat people with kindness, it changes us as well. There's power in this kind of loving kindness that changes. In fact, in the book that shows some of the research that supports this, shared a little bit about Shanti Feldhahn as a social researcher. And she talks in the book, The Kindness Challenge, about how the research supports what Jesus has been telling us all along. She talks about kindness as a superpower. That when we choose this kind of kindness, of intentional kindness, that it really does have the power to change people. Kind of like superheroes use their powers to help people and to change lives. Kindness is a kind of superpower. Anybody ever grow up watching superhero movies? You're like, I still do, yeah. Super Friends. Anybody like Super Friends growing up? Super Friends cartoon? A few of us. Mike? Yeah, I figured you might. Yeah, Super Friends. It was awesome. It was one of the best, right? So I was content with Superman, right? Because Superman, I mean, he pretty much he had all that you would need, right? He could fly, and let me tell you, I had the bath towel around my neck a lot trying to fly. It just never worked. I was so jealous of Superman. He could fly. He was super strong. He had X-ray vision. I mean, what else could you want for like superpowers? She suggests that kindness, this kind of kindness we're talking about, is a kind of superpower to change people's lives. Here's just four of the suggestions she has. She says, kindness makes you bulletproof. Of course, the superhero who is bulletproof can be shot with a bullet that would take somebody else's life but bounces right off the superhero. Kindness makes you bulletproof. When I was a kid, high schooler mostly, my best friend Bill, he loved to push my dad's buttons. And he knew what they were. And so we'd, be riding around somewhere, and we'd ride in the backseat of my car with my parents. And my friend Bill, he just loved to do it. He knew usually if you could just bring up the Democrats, boy, that was the button to push right there. And so my friend, he would do it. He'd say, hey, Joel, what do you think of those Democrats? And like, boop, push the button. And, things kind of go crazy. And I'm like, oh man, Dad, this is so embarrassing. And my friends were like, this is great. All right, we pushed his buttons. Wouldn't it be great if, the buttons could be broken? Not because we pushed them so many times, but because they're... but we just, could disconnect them. Wouldn't it be great if the people around you who know how to push your buttons and get you to respond in ways that you'll regret later discover one day that those buttons aren't working anymore? And they can spew all kinds of negativity towards you, and what they're going to get in return is kindness. Wouldn't it be great if you could drive down the freeway and you come to that road construction site where there's merging down to one lane, right? And although we all know that logically the most efficient way to accomplish this is if we'd all drive right up to the point and we'd all merge at the same place at the same time, that is the most efficient way to do that. But that is just not how we humans work. We do not usually operate logically. We do it emotionally, and so we merge 14 miles earlier than we need to, regardless though, okay? That's how it happens, and that's how we know it kind of should happen and all kind of play nice. And so you've played nice, and you merged 28 miles ago, and you're playing nice, and it's been slow, and you look in your mirror, and there you see that guy. who doesn't know how to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. And he's speeding up the left-hand lane. You know he's going to go all the way up there. And so you're like, I'm going to teach him a lesson. Right? So just let me ask you, how well is that working? Has that ever worked well in which the end of a situation, the guy like sent you a nice little message that said, thanks for educating me. I really needed that help. Right? When have you ever, after it was all over, did you feel good about yourself of like, I am so helpful to society? Or did anybody else in the car appreciate your educational abilities? No, you probably got slapped by your wife for being an idiot and putting your whole family in danger, right? Nobody felt like the emotional level rose because of that situation, because some unknown stranger pushed your button. Wouldn't it be great if you're just stay in the lane and be like, well, okay. Choosing to act with kindness is like a superpower that makes you bulletproof. And the buttons just don't work anymore. The second thing she suggests, kindness gives you X-ray vision. That when you're looking for something to praise in a person, it kind of requires you to stand in their shoes for a while. What happens when we stand in somebody else's shoes for a while is we begin to see the world differently from their perspective. So maybe for you, your kindness challenge is you want your marriage to go from good to great, and so you're showing the kindness challenge to your wife. And maybe in your house, if it's kind of some traditional roles, your wife usually is the one who does most of the house cleaning, and so you're like, okay, I'm gonna do my best to keep things picked up. Instead of her having to pick them up, I'm gonna pick them up and keep it clean. And because you're focusing on that, you're recognizing just how much of a slob you are, and that you leave your shoes and your coat and your stuff all over the place, and the rest of the family, you're like, no wonder. Why? X-ray vision, because now you are putting yourself in her shoes. The power of intentional kindness. Intentional kindness melts through walls. See, here's the thing. We've said it before lots of times. Hurt people hurt people. Some of the people in your lives who are so negative and they say such mean, nasty things, the result, and this doesn't make it okay for them to say it, but they have been the recipient of some hurt and some pain. And so they put up some walls and they keep people away. And one of the ways they protect themselves is by keeping people away is by being mean. And so when they're spewing their negativity on you and you intentionally respond with kindness, they see, and if it happens over and over and over, they recognize, here's a person who refuses to hurt me. And the walls begin to melt and the walls begin to come down. And you might be the one safe person in their life for whom they let their guard down. That's powerful. One more. Kindness makes the invisible visible. So here's reality. If you're stuck in like a cycle of negativity and arguing, you've gotten so used to seeing the negative things in your life and your relationships that you just see more of them because it's almost what you've unintentionally started looking for because that's what you focus on and talk about. But when you choose, I'm going to nix the negativity. I'm going to look for the positive. I'm going to look for what I can affirm. You see more of what you're looking for. And all those things that were invisible because you weren't looking for them, now you start to see them. Because you've chosen to look for the things that are good. Kindness is a superpower. Now would be the point someone might ask, well, I can think of a few situations where kindness would not be the best response. So is kindness ever the wrong approach? Great question. Let's talk about it. And the first thing we need to clarify is that when we're talking about kindness, kindness is not simply being nice. Okay? So someone recently told me, like, the Bible never says you just be nicer to each other and life's going to work out. And that's right. Because let's be honest, we have a tendency when we come across something new to simplify it down to where we can really wrap our heads around it. And the temptation is we oversimplify it too much. When we're talking about kindness, it's easy for us to oversimplify it down to a level to just like, oh yeah, just be nice. Here's the problem with being nice. Sometimes in your life, when you have been nice, you've just been avoiding a difficult situation. Quite often, being nice is our way to not speak up when we need to speak up. Sometimes being nice is really a sign of weakness, or a sign that you're too afraid. Kindness is not about weakness. Kindness is not about avoiding difficult situations. Kindness is not about avoiding confrontations. There are times when what somebody needs is confrontation. Here's an example, okay? It's kind of an extreme example. If you have somebody in your life who's struggling with alcoholism, the nice response might be to give them a drink when they ask for one, because it keeps the peace. But that's not what's best for them, is it? In fact, for someone who's struggling with alcoholism, the most kind thing you can do is to refuse to give them a drink, but offer them a ride to an AA meeting every night. Kindness is about giving the person what they need or what is best. Let me start that over. Kindness is about giving the person what is best for them, even if it's not always what they want. See, sometimes you have to call the cable company to get it right for the 27th time. The reality is, the customer service person on the other end of the line, they're probably not the person who messed it up last time. So why do they have to bear the brunt of your anger and frustration? The tech that they send out to repair it is probably not the same person who messed it up last time. So why should they have to bear the brunt of your frustration of another person? The employees in the company, they're carrying out policies they did not write, but some executive somewhere else wrote, and you're never going to be able to talk to the executive who's responsible for the policy. You're just dealing with the folks who are responsible for carrying out a policy they had no power in writing. So why should they bear the brunt of something they didn't do, not their fault? Yes, there are times when we need to confront. Kindness says, I will confront with gentleness and respect. So yes, kindness is the right approach as long as we understand kindness properly. Now, having said that, if there's something you need to confront in the relationship, the person you're working on, if it can wait until the end of the 30 days, that might be best. Now, again, we're not avoiding, we're not delaying, we're not just kind of, but maybe you need to practice kindness. And at the end of 30 days of practicing kindness, you'll be better at it, so then you'll be better equipped, okay? So don't view what I just said as like permission to throw everything we just said out the window, and you're going to go home and have it out and give them what they need, not what they want, okay? Okay, so just hang with me there. We're practicing and learning how to be kind. Let's go back to the research. When you choose to be kind, here's what we're saying. Kindness is powerful. Kindness changes people. Here is what the research said. So the folks who take up the kindness challenge did it for 30 days. We've already seen how 89% of them said the relationship got better, the relationship. But what about the other person? Now remember, thriving relationships is more about how we treat others than how they treat us. But here's what the research said. Even though getting them to change was not the intention, quite often it was the result. 35% of people said they changed a little bit for the better. 39% of people said they changed a lot for the better. Add those two numbers together, and 74% of people said, I did the kindness challenge, not waiting on them to change. I took full responsibility over my actions, and the result is that 74% of the time they changed. Even though they did nothing differently, I was the only one doing anything different. Only 23% of the time they didn't change, and only 3% of cases they changed for the worse. Why did they change? Because you changed. See, every relationship, it takes two to form a relationship, and everything one person does affects the other person in the relationship, and kindness is contagious. You change how you treat them, and they change how they respond. And when you keep treating them with a pattern of kindness, they are inspired to change how they respond. And when you choose proactive kindness, it changes them as well. They change. Yes, kindness changes people. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, though. And sometimes it takes a long time. And we don't stop being kind and showing intentional kindness just because they don't change quickly enough. In fact, we don't stop showing kindness even if they never change. Like I said, Jesus came along and he preached this crazy view that we're supposed to be different. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." That's in the Bible. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. A little bit later, he says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. See, the reality is they might not change. But we weren't doing this to get them to change in the first place. Because we know that thriving relationships is more about how I treat others. And for you, this will require sacrifice. This means that you're going to have to sacrifice your ego and to sacrifice your pride. If you get serious about showing intentional kindness, you're going to have to sacrifice your rights. See, the law of the land was that a Roman soldier could force anyone to carry his equipment for 1 mile. And so, you can imagine what that looked like. Folks would pick up that equipment with a grumpy frown on their face. They'd stomp out that whole mile. And when they got to 1 mile and 1 inch, they'd drop the equipment and walk off because they had the right to walk off. Jesus says, you get to the mile mark, you keep on walking to the 2 mile mark. And that Roman soldier, he's looking around. We're at the 1 mile mark, and he knows what's going to happen. You're going to drop your stuff. He's looking for the next person to carry it the next mile. And when he looks up, you're still walking, and he's like, oh, this must be one of those Jesus followers. They give up their rights and go the extra mile. See, the ancient Jewish people, they had a word to describe this kind of radical loving kindness. In their Hebrew language, it was the word kesed. And it usually referred to, it was a descriptor of the God who pursues us and the God who shows kindness to us when we don't deserve it. It's like the Old Testament story of the man who pursued his wife even though she had cheated on him. And God says that's the ultimate kesed. And God and his loving kindness kesed changes us, but it cost him. And we get into the New Testament, Jesus comes, and the good news of Jesus spreads across the Greek-speaking world and changes people's lives. They don't use the Hebrew language, so it's not kesed any longer. It's grace, and we read this in Romans chapter 5. Very rarely we read, will anyone die for a righteous person? Though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, selfish people doing our own thing, going our own way, when we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Why? Kesed, the undeserved loving kindness of God. And this week, when you choose kindness, and it costs you time and energy, your ego, your pride, your rights, you are merely spreading what God started and Jesus continued in you. It's the power of kindness. Okay, let's get practical. 2 minutes. That's it. All right. I'm going to go really quickly. We said we're going to do 3 things. The third thing every day is we're going to show practical kindness in a practical. Every day, do a small act of kindness for your person. Okay, some of us, you're like, man, we're 7 days in and I'm running out of ideas. Okay, I've got some ideas for you here. We'll go really quickly. If something catches you, like write it down or take a quick picture, screenshot, whatever it may be, because we're going quickly here. Number 1, acts of service. Like pick up the vacuum cleaner, plug it in, turn it on, vacuum all the carpet, Great acts of service, okay? Clear the dishes, wash the dishes. Like whatever it is, if you're like your spouse especially, whatever it is that they do normally that they don't normally enjoy, you do that for them. It's awesome act of service, okay? Number 2, give affection. Very important here, okay? Very, very important. Give affection in the way they want to receive affection. I don't know if we caught that. Wheels are turning. Guys, especially husbands, you're doing this for your wife, okay? Listen very, very carefully here, okay? If you're going to show affection to your wife as an act of kindness, show her affection in the way she wants to receive affection, not the way you would prefer to give it or receive it, in the way she wants to receive it, okay? Understood? Do I need to be more specific? We do have a few kids here, so, if you need specificity, come find me afterwards, okay? Okay, good. We're on the same page. Wives, be careful. Don't start nudging your husbands, because if you, reverse engineer that one and apply it to your own life, just saying, okay? We all got to work at this. Okay, we better move on. Next one. Write a note. Like as simple as a Post-it note. Put it in a lunchbox. Post it on a computer screen. Somewhere. They find it through the day. Simple. One line. I appreciate all that you do for us. How about at 2:37 p.m., you just send a random, not asked for text message. I appreciate you. Next one. Share an item that you would like to keep for yourself. Here's an example of what I mean by that. My mom used to make lemon bars. They were awesome. And every church potluck, she'd bring lemon bars. And of course, we were way back in the line. And by the time we got up to the lemon bars, they were all gone. And we were like, Mom, you always make lemon bars and everybody else gets to enjoy them and we never get to enjoy them. And one day she made a whole pan of lemon bars for us. We didn't have to share them with anybody. It was awesome. Whatever is your lemon bar in your life, you do that for that person, your family, whoever it may be. Awesome. Lifetime memory right there. All these last 2. Give your time. For most of us, our time is our most precious resource. It's even more scarce than our money. And so giving someone your time might be the best gift you give them. Or maybe it's this last one here. To give your attention. Like laptop closed, phone face down on the counter, television off, sitting on the couch, right there across from the table. What would you like to talk about in 15 minutes of undivided, uninterrupted attention? Might be the best gift you have given in months or years. If you need more practical, helpful suggestions, especially husbands and wives, you can go to jointhekindnesschallenge.com. You can sign up for a daily email list that every day will send you one practical suggestion and hint for what to do. There's a special list for husbands showing to their wives. There's one for wives showing to their husbands. There's one for parents who are trying to show kindness to your kids who are living at home. There's one for coworkers for showing kindness in the workplace for these specific issues. Sign it up. Sign up for that. Get more information there. I don't want to leave you with this. Kindness works. In 2009, France noticed a 17% drop in tourism in 1 year. TripAdvisor reports and feedback, visitors found Paris residents to be hostile and unfriendly. And in the middle of a global recession, France realized they needed all the tourism money they could get. And so here's what they did about it. They knew that kindness is contagious, and so they hired smile ambassadors. They paid people to walk around Paris, stand on the street corner, and smile at people, because they knew that if you'd smile at someone, even if you're getting paid to do it, they wouldn't know you're getting paid to do it. They'll smile back at you, and when everybody's smiling, it raises the friendliness of the whole place. Well, that wasn't enough. And the French government official in charge of tourism went on the radio, television, social media, whatever, and he begged and pleaded with Paris residents to be nicer to tourists. They were smart enough to try it, and in 2013, Paris ranked number 1 TripAdvisor's traveler's choice. Okay, that's just a silly example. But it highlights it well and supports what Jesus has been telling us all along and what God has been showing us all along, that kindness is contagious. And when you choose to show kindness, you feel better. The person you're showing it to feels better. Every person who witnesses it feels better. And people end up wanting to show it more to others because it's what they're seeing around. And kindness, intentional kindness, changes home environments, it changes office environments, it changes lives. And here's what we all know. We know that we are just showing the chesed loving kindness that God has shown to us, and we're just spreading it around the world to everybody around us. So let's show kindness. Let me pray for you. God, thank you for your powerful example of kindness. God, I pray that you would help us, that you would empower us. God, I pray for those folks, especially who wrote down on their card on the name of a person that it was really difficult to get along with, those even toxic relationships. God, I pray, would you give them your power and your strength to show intentional kindness? God, I pray that they would know, that they would just experience your presence and power working through them in a special way, and God, we'll just give you all the credit. So God, this week, would you help us? We want to be change agents in the world around us. Help us this week, every day, to show intentional kindness. Help us, God, we ask, in your name. Amen.